everyone. Good evening. My name is Mariana Savenslico from Group 6, and tonight we will be talking about biodiversity and a healthy society. First, let me represent the introduction of our topic. Decrease in biodiversity is imminent worldwide. It is evident that plant and animal species are disappearing at a fast rate. Many species are on the verge of extinction, while others are already gone. Second, Marco Lambertini, the General Director of WWF International, described that the disappearance of wildlife is at an unprecedented rate. Our planet is flashing red warning signs, he said, from the fish in our oceans and rivers to bees, which plays a crucial role in our agricultural production. Third, Earth might enter the sixth mass extinction event according to experts. The Holocene extinction, otherwise referred to as the sixth mass extinction or Anthropocene extinction, is an ongoing extinction event of species during the present Holocene epoch, with a more recent time sometimes called Anthropocene. As a result of human activity, life on Earth has suffered 5 mass extinctions already in its long history, caused by massive volcanic eruptions, deep ice ages, meteorite impacts, and clashing continents. But some scientists believe a sixth mass extinction has now begun. Another one. Mass extinction is described as the disappearance of species at a rate of 1,000 faster than usual. Others argue that we shouldn't worry about extinction since it is a natural process, but fossil records show that current extinction levels are around 1,000 times the natural background rate. Lastly, the disappearance of species in a certain environment causes an imbalance in the ecosystem, producing more chaotic changes that harm the entire ecosystems. What is biodiversity? In a broad sense, it is the variety of life on Earth, in all its forms and all its interactions. It is the most complex feature of our planet, but it is the most vital. The term was coined in 1985, a contraction of biological diversity. It is composed of several levels: the genes, individual species, communities of creature, and the entire ecosystems, example, forests or coral reefs. Genes are made up of DNA, or deoxyribonucleic acid. Genes are a set of instructions that determine what the organism is like, its appearance, how it survives, and how it behaves in its environment. Species are a group of living organisms consisting of similar individuals capable of exchanging genes or interbreeding. Example of this is Homo sapiens, which are humans, Alcis laecis, which is moose, Ursus americans, black bears. There are all kinds of life forms, from the single-celled organisms to the largest multi-celled organisms. You need a microscope to see single-celled organisms. Example of these are amoebas, algae, plankton, and bacteria. The variability comes from different sources including terrestrial, marine, and other aquatic ecosystems. Terrestrial biodiversity is usually greater near the equator due to the warm climate and high primary productivity. Terrestrial animals are those who live in lands. And example of this are dogs, cats, ants, cows, flies, lions, monkeys, snakes, and other. Aquatic animals are those animals that live in the sea, ocean, or in any bodies of water. Some of these are crab, fish, seal, octopus, shark, seahorse, starfish, etc. In a philosophical view, biodiversity represents the knowledge learned by evolving species over millions of years about how to survive through the vastly varying environmental conditions Earth has experienced. It is true that people will always depend on biodiversity on the wholeness of our being and in our everyday lives. The air we breathe, the water we drink, and the food we eat all rely on biodiversity. Next, let's talk about ecosystem. An ecosystem is a geographic area where plants, animals, and other organisms, as well as weather and landscapes, work together to form a bubble of life. A community of organisms and their physical environment interacting together. Ecosystem contains biotic or living parts as well as abiotic or non-living parts. Example of non-living parts are rocks, temperature, and humidity. Every factor in ecosystem depends on every other factor, either directly or indirectly. The whole surface of Earth is a series of connected ecosystems. Ecosystems can be very small as an oasis or vast as an ocean. Why is ecosystem important? First one, it provides habitat to wild plants and animals. Second, it promotes various food chains and food webs. Number 3, it controls essential ecological processes and promotes lives. It involved in the recycling of nutrients between biotic and abiotic components. It helps in maintaining the usual flow of energy in an ecosystem, including carbon cycle, energy cycle, nitrogen cycle, oxygen cycle, and water cycle. That will be all for my report. Thank you and good evening.
Good evening, BC1B. So right now we're going to talk about the changes in biodiversity, threats to biodiversity, and the consequences of biodiversity loss. First, let's talk about the changes in biodiversity. What is change and what are these changes? So change implies an alteration. An alteration in any system could bring varied effects. A change in biodiversity could have erratic effects not only on wildlife or marine life but also in human beings. When our ecosystem is not well taken care of, biodiversity encounters changes that may impact human health on such different levels. So the changes are biodiversity alteration and biodiversity loss. So biodiversity alteration is not the same as biodiversity loss. So it is important that we have a distinction between the two because not all biodiversity change is a bad thing. Let's define biodiversity alteration. So alteration of biodiversity is the human-induced changes that leads to modifications of community structure or to shifts in species distribution. So the causes of this, from the term itself, modifications of community structure, are human activities. Human activities such as road constructions in forests, like in the picture, and mining. Examples of biodiversity alteration are species range shifts and the road constructions in forest. Next is the biodiversity loss. So biodiversity loss is a local or the global extinction of an allele or a species. It is caused by climate change, pollution, destruction of habitats, invasive alien species, and overexploitation. So climate change is the global change in the weather conditions or the patterns of weather. And we are now experiencing this one. Pollution, destruction of habitats. Destruction of habitats include deforestation. Invasive alien species are the non-native species that compete with the native species for spaces and food and other resources. Overexploitation, examples of this include overfishing and overharvesting. And examples of biodiversity loss, species extinction. So the threats to biodiversity. According to the United Nations Environment Program, there are 5 major threats to biodiversity. The first one is the habitat loss and destruction. Second is the alteration in ecosystem composition. Third is overexploitation. The fourth one is pollution and contamination. And the last one is the global climate change. So, let's define why these major threats are a threat to biodiversity. So the first one, habitat loss and destruction. It is a threat to biodiversity because a destroyed habitat has a declined carrying capacity for indigenous plants, animals, and other organisms. That means when a habitat is destroyed, it has less capacity for carrying life. Next is the alteration in ecosystem composition. It is a threat since it reduces resources of food and materials and upsets the complex balance of ecosystems. And third is overexploitation. It is a threat to biodiversity due to the reason that when too many species or even just a few important species are taken out of the ecosystem of a certain place, the whole network of life in that area can collapse. The next one is pollution and contamination. So pollution and contamination is a threat to biodiversity because it makes the environment unsuitable for survival directly or indirectly. And the last one, global climate change, it is really a threat to biodiversity since it causes the species to adapt to a new climate patterns. And since species are not of the same capacity to adapt to the new patterns, then global climate change became a threat to biodiversity. So consequences of biodiversity loss. As we all know, the consequences of biodiversity loss are affecting everyone. So from the picture here, it says, a dangerous game. Biodiversity loss can have significant direct human health impacts if ecosystem services are no longer adequate to meet social needs. Indirectly, changes in ecosystem services affect livelihoods, income, local migration, and on occasion, may even cause or exacerbate political conflict. So from the picture at the right side of the presentation, the author of the poster quoted here at the bottom part, the loss of biodiversity will be the downfall of mankind. It is true that the loss of biodiversity will be the downfall of the mankind since mankind depends on biodiversity. And that could be all for the changes and threats and consequences of biodiversity loss.
A pleasant evening, everyone. I am Giselle Gulay, a BEC 1B student of Bohol Island State University main campus. Tonight, I'm going to report my assigned topic, Nutritional Impact of Biodiversity. So, let's start! Biodiversity plays a crucial role in human nutrition through its influence on world food production, as it ensures the sustainable productivity of soils, and provides the genetic resources for all crops, livestock, and marine species harvested for food. Access to sufficiency of nutritious variety of food is fundamental determinant of health. As we talk about nutritional impact of biodiversity, human nutrition and biodiversity are both connected with the words food production. Food production is essential to satisfy basic human needs. Poor diet throughout the life course is a major risk factor for chronic diseases, which are the leading cause of global deaths. So, nutrition and biodiversity are linked at many levels. First, the ecosystem with food production as an ecosystem service. Ecosystem services are the engine of the environment. They are essential to life. Most food production hinges on the wise management of ecosystem services and biodiversity. They maintain healthy soils, enable pollination, and other services. Healthy ecosystems are the best way to ensure productive agriculture and nutritious food. Ecosystems need to be supported in order to keep supporting agriculture, livestock, forestry, and fisheries. Ecosystem services make human life possible by, for example, providing nutritious food and clean water, regulating disease and climate, supporting the pollination of crops and soil formation, and providing recreational, cultural, and spiritual benefits. Second, the species in the ecosystem. Biodiversity boosts ecosystem productivity, where each species, no matter how small, all have an important role to play. For example, a larger number of plant species means a greater variety of crops. Greater species diversity ensures natural sustainability for all life forms. In addition, healthy ecosystems can better withstand and recover from a variety of disasters. And so, while we dominate this planet, we still need to preserve the diversity in wildlife. Have you ever wondered why there are different varieties of plants and animals? This is because of biodiversity. And then, the third, the genetic diversity within species. Each individual species possesses genes which are the source of its own unique features. Genetic diversity refers to the diversity or genetic variability within species. In human beings, for example, the huge variety of people's faces reflect each person's genetic individuality. The term genetic diversity also covers distinct populations of single species, like thousands of breeds of different dogs. Nutritional composition between foods and among varieties, cultivars, or breeds of the same food can differ dramatically, affecting micronutrient availability in the diet. Healthy local diets with adequate average levels of nutrients intake necessitates maintenance of high biodiversity levels. Intensified and enhanced food production through irrigation, use of fertilizer, plant protection, pesticides, or the introduction of crop varieties and cropping patterns affect biodiversity and thus impact global nutritional status and human health. Habitat simplification, species loss, and species succession often enhance communities' vulnerabilities as a function of environmental receptivity to ill health. The main cause of the loss of biodiversity can be attributed to the influence of human beings on the world's ecosystem. In fact, human beings have deeply altered the environment and have modified the territory, exploiting the species directly. For example, let's examine the two pictures shown on the screen. We all know that the waste in intensifying enhancing food production could be a lot dangerous to human and animal health. We can see on the picture below the excessive using of pesticides in agricultural activities. Through this act, we are slowly giving negative impact to global nutritional status and human health, which could lead any species to ill health or worse, death. But currently, people are becoming more aware of the effects of biodiversity loss and taking precautions. More organizations are working on new ways to lower biodiversity loss more effectively. There are several important ways in which humans can slow biodiversity loss. Reduction of deforestation, reduction of agricultural expansion, and using renewable energy systems. Although there is no way to bring back the species that have already gone extinct. But let's continue to give importance to our nutritional impact of biodiversity.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Manuel Guino, and I'll be the one to report topic 4, which is health, biology, and biodiversity. Defining terms: health. The World Health Organization states that, as a basic principle, health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. Biology is derived from the Greek words bios, meaning life, and logos, meaning study, and is defined as the science of life and living organisms, or simply the study of life. Biodiversity is the biological variety and variability of life on Earth, or simply, all the different kinds of life in an area. Almost all living organisms are dependent to their environment to live and reproduce. All living things depend on their environment to supply them with what they need, including air, food, water, and shelter, which are the basic needs of living organisms. For example, living things that cannot make their own food must eat other organisms for food. Other interactions between living things include symbiotic relationships and competition for resources. For most of human history, increases in longevity were due to improved access to these necessities. Advances in agriculture, sanitation, water treatment, and hygiene have a far greater impact on human health than medical technology. Although the environment sustains human life, it can also cause diseases. Lack of basic necessities is a significant cause of human mortality. Environmental hazards increase the risk of cancer, heart disease, asthma, and many other illnesses. Environmental hazards. An environmental hazard is a substance, state, or event which has the potential to threaten the surrounding natural environment or adversely affect people's health. These hazards can be physical, such as pollution, toxic chemicals, and food contaminants, or they can be social, such as dangerous work, poor housing conditions, and poverty. The interrelation between human health and biological diversity is considerable and complex. With the current biodiversity loss at unprecedented rates, the delicate balance between human health and biological diversity is at risk. The report explains how biodiversity and human health are intimately interrelated and have a mutual impact. For instance, on water and air quality, food production, diet, microbial diversity, and non-transmissible diseases. According to the innovative Connecting Global Priorities, Biodiversity and Human Health Report, presented last February at the 14th World Congress on Public Health, held in Kolkata, India, protecting animals, plants, and ecosystems means protecting our health.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jules T. Garcia, and I will be explaining environment-related illnesses. An environmental illness can occur when you are exposed to toxins or substances in the environment that make you sick. These health hazards may be found where you live, work, or play, or pretty much likely everywhere. Environment-related illnesses examples includes chemicals in cigarettes are known to cause lung cancer. Exposure to asbestos, an insulating material found in some older buildings, can cause tumors, lung cancer, and other diseases. Wood-burning stoves and poorly vented gas ranges can produce smoke or gases that can cause breathing problems. Some illnesses are the following: Some illnesses that are found to be related with its environment include Parkinson's disease, heart disease, cancer, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, asthma, diabetes, obesity, occupational injuries, dysentery, arthritis, malaria, and depression. By contrast, activities that promote health and extend human life could have adverse environmental effects. A reduction in mortality from starvation or disease can lead to overpopulation, which stresses the environment in many different ways, increasing use of fossil fuels, clearing of land, generating pollution and waste, and so on. According to experts, climate change could also have a serious impact on human health and could deteriorate farming systems and reduce nutrients in some foods. Relationships between human health and the environment raise many ethical, social, and legal dilemmas by forcing people to choose among competing values. No issue demands greater care in balancing benefits and risks than global warming. Climate change is likely to cause tremendous harm to the environment and human health. But taking steps to drastically reduce greenhouse gases could have adverse consequences for global, national, and local economies. When drafting and implementing environmental health regulations, it is important to consider vulnerable subpopulations. What is vulnerable subpopulations? Vulnerable subpopulation is a group with an increased susceptibility to the adverse effects of an environmental risk factor due to their age, genetics, health status, or some other condition. If an environmental regulation is designed to protect average members of population, it may fail to adequately protect vulnerable subpopulations. Public health strategies pit the rights of individuals against the good of society, such as mandatory treatment, vaccination or diagnostic testing, isolation and quarantine, and disease surveillance. Human rights issues also come up with research on environmental health that involves human subjects. A mitigating plan and a workable plan of action should be studied in order to not compromise biodiversity, while at the same time promote good health among the society. In summary, most of the time it may seem impossible to really value species singly or in a detailed manner, but we have to consider the entire Earth as a single unit. A loss of single-celled species or a family of wild grass could have adverse effects in the entire biosphere. Biodiversity, seen in macro level, seems to be still vast and rich. Yet, if we look at it in micro level per species, we have to lose too much. Eventually, in the near future, this biodiversity loss will have a great negative effect, especially to us humans. The value of biodiversity is the value of everything.